Привет, доброе утро. Меня зовут Mark, and I don't speak Russian. I'm just a regular graznya svenya who learned a couple phrases. Actually, I had my friend Natalie help me out with this one. She grew up in Russia. She lived in Russia for a while. Actually, let's give her a friendly shout out. So my friend Natalie, we used to work together back in the day. She's super cool, and she's actually a budding actress and model, and she's on Instagram. So I'll put the Instagram information somewhere. So give her a follow, say hello, be nice, and let's get into it. So I have heard the requests, and by heard I mean read, and boy, oh boy, there was an overwhelming amount of requests for Slaughter to Prevail, Alex Terrible. And that's the reason I opened the video with some Russian. Alex Terrible, Slaughter to Prevail, if you don't know them, they are a band from Russia. He's a Russian vocalist, and he has a really iconic sounding low. His low vocals, you know, it's the kind that when you hear him, you're like, that's Alex. So we're going to talk about that today, a little bit about how he does it. One quick thing before we get into it, I don't like to dialogue too long or monologue too long, but one quick thing, we've done a lot of deathcore and death metal. So for the next video, for next week, I kind of want to get a little bit more melodic, just to try something new. I still want to do metal vocals, right? So something with a nice 50-50 ratio, like some, for example, Opeth, Neverbreath, Iscarius, some bands that have like really solid metal vocals, but maybe a little bit of singing, because I help people with singing a lot too. So I think that'd be fun to talk about. But let's go ahead and get into it. I had a lot of requests for Agony, but I feel like Chronic Slaughter is a little bit more representative of his iconic sound. So we're gonna do Iconic Slaughter. We're gonna talk about his lows, and we're gonna get into it. As always, I try to make these not only just entertaining but educational as well. So I'm gonna do more than just say, "Oh, that sounds really cool," and I'm actually gonna hopefully give you some tips that you can take home and use to improve your own vocals as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's make this full screen. We got the mask, of course. You gotta have the mask. We got a really driving sound, you know. All right, so we can actually stop it there. I'm not going to stop it every 30 seconds, but there's enough to talk about there. So one thing about Alex that he's doing right here is when we're talking about metal vocals, something that's really important, we've talked about vowel shapes in past videos. That's going to apply forever. But another thing is your vocal posture. Not the posture of how you're standing, but the posture of how you're holding your mouth. One thing that we do in metal vocals is we learn to hold a portion of our mouth one way while moving the other parts of the mouth another way. So, for example, at the beginning, he's got kind of a hollow sound. Let's go back and hear that when he comes in. Also, the lyrics are in Russian, so I'm not going to know what he's saying. I'm just going to kind of make the same sounds. Yeah, so it's kind of like a high. He's found that. Now, the way I'm doing that is I'm making an I. It's a very narrow and hollow sound, right? It's a very narrow, hollow sound, but he's able to say words around it. So he's holding the back of his mouth in that vowel posture, while moving the front of his mouth to articulate around that sound, and that's how he maintains that thin, hollow sound. So it's very similar to how guttural position can be used while articulating. It's not going to sound like a guttural, but it makes it sound low. So a guttural position is basically this. Well, there are a couple ways to do it. This is the way I do it. And you can hold your tongue that way. So a guttural. But if I just articulate around that maintained vocal posture, it sounds like this, right here, right here. Right, so we maintain that posture and articulate around it, so we have our same bass hollow sound. That's what he's doing here. And then he shifts. He's going to shift pretty soon, it sounded like, into his lower vocals. So let's talk about that too. That's actually a really good example here. You see how he had a really... Now, this is a music video, of course, so he's probably lip syncing, as we all do in music videos. But this is, if you watch live videos of him, it's very similar. And actually, we should probably pull one up. I have one ready. But look at his mouth posture. That's actually really similar to what I was talking about. You see the tongue here, sort of in that guttural position, and his mouth nice and wide open. This guy, I think that's one thing that he has down really well, is working around the sound that he wants. All right, let's listen to it for a little bit, maybe a minute or so, and then I'll jump back in. We want to actually hear the song, right? Okay, so, that was sick. So he went from like a low mid to a low low, if we can call it that. Let's hear that again. Now that's one way you can add intensity to your vocals without using your glottis. Now the word may start with a B or whatever, but so what happened there, you can see on my mouth, is I changed my tongue and I extended my lips a little bit to basically lengthen the cavity of my mouth, thus making it a little lower. He drops to that same vocal position as well. And that's a lot of the times, to get the maximum amount of change in tone and sound, we don't have to do as much as we think. So let's watch this. Let's go a little farther. That's cool. It's simple, but it's cool. Kind of bouncy. One thing that he does really well, and that you're going to need as well, is not only distortion placement, but maintaining distortion placement. A lot of times the students that I work with that are newer to metal vocals, once we help them find that sound, which is honestly the hardest part in metal vocals, just finding the sound. Everything else usually kind of clicks into place afterwards, but finding that sound and then maintaining that placement while you move through different vowel shapes and articulate different consonants. He does that super well. And that's part of the reason you'll notice some people in the metal vocal community, they'll call the sound of the distortion the rattle. It's basically the frequency at which the soft tissues are flapping. Dot, 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 dot. His rattle tends to be really consistent, and part of that is because he's great at maintaining the position of his distortion, and he's also got strong support underneath. So keep that in mind. If you're losing your distortion on certain vowel sounds or certain consonants, it's probably because you just need to take it backpedal a little bit, and focus on really maintaining that distortion placement high up in the back of the throat and the back of the mouth, up off your vocal folds, and just practice holding it for a long time and listening. You can even record yourself. And once you have it to a spot where it doesn't waver, it sounds consistent all the way through, you'll probably, you will be able to articulate and move through your vowel shapes easily. So he's obviously practiced a lot. Okay, so that's an interesting technique here. That always kind of reminds me of Emir. Now, I'm not saying Slaughter to Prevail is like Immure, but just that vocal, when you talk like this, turn it into a scream that way. It's kind of hard to do. Okay, well, I should specify. It's kind of hard to do properly. You can go from singing into screaming easily, but without slamming together those vocal folds, that's a different story. So let's see if we can catch that again. One way you're going to be able to do that really well is by placing your resonance in the front. So he doesn't say back here. Not back there. Even when I did it, it felt kind of scratchy. I'm not going to do that again. He placed his resonance in the front, so his hard palate and his lips were buzzing. When you do that, everything's focused up and forward, and you're going to be able to transition. Also, since these are false chords, which is where I, as a vocalist and instructor, am most comfortable. He's going from a place of vocal fold closure to vocal fold openness. Completely uncompressing that airflow with his vocal folds, and that's allowing him to switch basically from the singing to the screaming well. It's a gentle thing. If you're the kind of vocalist who likes this sound, it's a gentle thing. You don't want to slam through that transition from the singing or the voiced talking tone to the metal vocal. You want to slide through it very gently. And a lot of that's going to come from controlling the rate and the engagement of the diaphragm. So a lot of diaphragm exercises are going to help you with that. Let's do it again, yeah. There we go. So that's a good bleh. A bleh. I don't know if he used a tunnel in it. It kind of sounded like maybe he did. That's what I generally do. I don't bleh a lot. I more than I bleh. But one thing I also want to talk about, and you can hear it back, I'm not going to rewind it. One thing I also wanted to talk about is we think oftentimes we make mistakes as vocalists when we think of lows as being underneath us and highs as being above us. Sometimes to get that thinner, I think of all of that as coming up and over. So I aim it at my soft palate, and I imagine it running along the roof of my mouth and coming out. A lot of people would call this over the pencil. I've had that work for some people and just confuse others, so take it as you will. But I imagine it coming up and over the top, the roof of my mouth, so higher, and then coming out that way, over that line where the pencil would be, or over your bottom teeth, however you want to think about it. And that basically is what helps you. Those are all considered low metal vocals, but I'm thinking of them as being placed high relative in the place of my mouth. So a lot of the times when I'm working with students, they overthink a low vocal and they think that they have to like dig deep into the earth for it. So they'll shove their larynx down, or they'll like do these painful looking things with their jaws. And I'm like, stop. Like if you look at me, you're going to see that I don't change as much as you probably would think. It's a lot of tongue and a lot of resonance placement. So that sound, let's talk about a little bit how resonance works. So part of the way he gets so low is that, and this is a suspicion, I can't confirm because I'm not a doctor in Russia, I can't look down his throat, but we have this part of our vocal tract called the pharynx, and it basically it's split into three parts. Whoops, three parts: the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. And it's basically the tube that runs from your soft palate down in the back of your throat. And the size of that can affect the resonance of our vocal quality, right? Now, that's not a deciding factor. Okay, I suspect that he has a naturally large pharynx. It's just a suspicion, okay? But if you don't have a naturally large pharynx, or you're like me and your vocal anatomy is all narrow and you have to sleep with a face mask, you know, it just means you have to learn a little bit more on how to open that throat and relax. So I think that he probably has a naturally large pharynx, but it's also possibly he doesn't. He's just really good at relaxing. I was working with a student actually right before this video, and I was just like, dude, just relax into the vocal. And once, it took him a while, but once he did that, it actually resonated a lot more because the muscles were easing up a little bit. So that's part of the way he's able to maintain that nice low sound. Actually, well, let's keep going. And see, that's a good example of holding the posture and then articulating around it. I don't know what he said because it's in Russian, but right? Holding the posture, articulating around it. Dum bum bum bum. You saw that big open mouth shape again. So another thing, let's talk about, I can't find it because it's such a quick frame. Let's talk a little bit about how to do that, right? Because some people, they're like, well, I open my mouth and I lose my low. What the heck's going on? Part of that also comes from the soft palate. Okay. So as vocalists, singers, or screamers, one thing that's going to be really important to having a good sound is being able to control the soft palate. So if you're like a classical singer, an opera singer, your soft palate, you're going to want that raised pretty high. Now, I'm not a classical singer here, so if there are any classical singers out there and they're like, he sounded terrible, well, that's why. But like, it's the difference between nessun torma and nessun torma. Now I'm exaggerating it a little bit so you can hear the difference. If I over exaggerate it and my larynx goes up, it kind of has a Kermit the Frog sound. So keep that in mind. I'm exaggerating it so you can hear the difference really well. Now, why am I telling you this? Because our low vocals are low because they resonate in a large space. So if I have a narrow space in my mouth, let's get away from this this insert of the YouTube video. If I have a narrow space in my mouth, let's say this is the back of my tongue, and I do this, and I raise my soft palate, well, I've got more space for sound to resonate, so it's going to sound more hollow and more low, right? And then if I open my mouth while keeping the soft palate raised slightly, I'm going to maintain that low sound. It's kind of like, you know, those like hip hop dancers or whatever. I wish I had an example. I should have got a video example ready, but that's okay. But you know what I'm talking about? They like move, like when they do the robot and like their hand moves independently, but the rest of their arm doesn't move. It's kind of like that. We want to move the front of our mouth while maintaining our soft palate in the same place, right? We want to hold one thing still while moving another part of the body. And usually we don't do that because like usually people who, when you move one part of your body, the rest of your body moves with it slightly. But you have to learn to move these parts of the mouth independently of one another so that you can maintain these sounds. You know, one thing I like about this band, they overall, the composition of this song is very it's not overly complex, but it's very driving, and it has kind of that sound that makes you kind of want to bounce along to it, you know? So we're not getting crazy here, but it's very intense through its delivery of driving rhythms, and I'm enjoying that. I love that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those drums and that dissonant guitar, something's gonna happen. I don't know what, but something's gonna happen. There it is. That's pretty good. Okay. I think if I was now the drummer's a badass. He's not doing anything wrong. But I think if I were to make one change, just based on preference, not on what's right and wrong, just my own personal preference, instead of going ta da ta da ta da ta da, I would have gone halftime. I think it just would have made it contrastually more of a contrast, which I would have enjoyed. But that also was pretty badass. Looks like somebody really put their heart into this video. Sorry. Oh, that was the end. Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that was a lot that was a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. Okay, well, let's not end the video here just yet, because I want to talk a little bit more about Alex's technique. So what have we talked about so far? We've talked about resonating in the pharynx. We've talked about relaxing the throat. And we've also talked about maintaining vocal posture in the back of the mouth and articulating the front of the mouth independently. So I pulled up a video. One thing I like about this guy, I've never met him, of course, but just he seems like a really cool dude because he does like other covers as well. Like he does a We Will Rock You Queen. Oh my God, there's a Barbie girl cover. Oh, we're not going to get into that, but that sounds awesome. So here, this is a really good video. This is from his channel. He's got a lot of cool stuff on his channel. Ooh, let's talk about that. So we've talked about it in prior videos, but when we want to add a punch with our vocals, we don't want to do it down here. So he could have said, we will. But what he did instead to create that, because essentially all that punch is obstructed air being released. That's a plosive sound in the front, right? That's what that's called, a plosive sound. So he said, we, but he had a sort of what you could call a mixed onset down here. It wasn't, and it wasn't, it was, and he made that punch, we will rock you. Right? So good on you there. Good on you there, man. That's a smart way to do it. Also, another thing that helps this guy's vocals, let's just be real, dude's ripped. He's shredded. And having that muscular, like having a strong core, it is going to help you. So that's one area I could get a little bit better in. Now I want to clarify something. Oh, that's a cool still. I want to clarify something still. One thing you're going to see this guy do is he tilts his head down for we will rock you. Okay? But you'll notice the sound of the low doesn't really change that much. See that? That's a habit that a lot of metal vocalists have. Man, every still in this video is just gold. Look at that guy. Like, that's a habit that people have to change those vowel shapes, because but watch. If I tilt my head, you're going to hear the vowel sound, the vowel shape change. But if I put my head back up, I can maintain that. It's a little bit different, but it's going to serve the same purpose. I'm not a big fan. This guy's an amazing vocalist. He does a great job. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying personally, I'm not a big fan of like the pulled vocal postures, just because I feel it's unnecessary tension. So instead of doing this, learn how to control it with your articulators. That's what I would say. We will rock you. That's generally my teaching approach. Don't constrict, open and relax. That's my philosophy. Let's listen to a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Oh, there we go. Look at that. We got to see right into his mouth. You know, unless you're into vocals or you're taking or giving vocal lessons, being excited about being able to see into another person's mouth is a little strange. Well, maybe you're a dentist. Oh, you can see it a little bit, but you saw the tongue back. The back of his mouth was maintaining that low posture, while the front of his mouth was opening and articulating, allowing that sound to come through. But anyways, we're not going to go through this whole video because I've already taken up a good amount of your time. I think we're almost up to 30 minutes. But I hope that was insightful. Alex Terrible is a great vocalist. I think Slaughter to Prevail is a pretty good band. His lows are great. Remember, when you're at home, you know, because I can't be there with you telling you what to do. Take it easy on this sort of stuff. Your vocal folds and your vocal anatomy, I mean, it's not this brittle, weak thing, but you do want to be careful with it. So if you don't sound like Alex Terrible today, don't worry about it. Work into it slowly. If you need extra help, I do give one-on-one Skype lessons. I do have a couple more openings that just popped up. So if I've been speaking with you on Instagram and you've wanted to know about openings, here's your response. I've got a couple more openings for next week, and then I go back to a full-time desk job the week after that. I'll still be doing lessons alongside of that full-time desk job, but it'll be a little bit more limited. But as always, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was entertaining. Next week, we're going to get into something a little bit more melodic. We're going to work on singing and screaming a little bit. And as always, good luck with that. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.